GarageBand users, welcome to our video where we go over best practices for mixing drums in GarageBand with no mixer. We're going to get into my 3 favorite plugins for mixing drums in GarageBand, or any DAW really, but in particular these 3 plugins work great for GarageBand, so let's go. So let's hear what we have now. First things first, I'll just kind of pan out the stuff that I know is going to be panned, which is going to be the overhead left and right and the room left and right. And then, like I said, we're kind of clunky with the one-track mixer, so this is really the only way to do it to start. I like to start in the order I just put them in and do kick in, kick out. We'll just mute the track for now. And then the way to put plugins on is down on this window here, the little dial up top, and we can load plugins on the track, and you click here on plugins. I don't mess with any of this built-in GarageBand stuff. It's like if you just got a Mac and want to make a beat real quick, that's what you would use. But we're going to use the actual plugins. So let's load up the compressor. See if this does anything. I'm all about third-party plugins because if you're jumping to different DAWs, it's like the same plugin in each one. So that's my preferred workflow. But yeah, for here, I believe it's just the same thing, because see, when I turn it off, it turns, this is like a remote control for this plugin, because you pull up the compressor and it's kind of basic. So this you know, and this tweaks the it's kind of like a macro basically. Same with the EQ, you know, it's like a remote control for that plugin. This is like the channel EQ in Logic though. They actually did hook you up with that. My first third-party plugin that I highly recommend for GarageBand is Wave's CLA Mix Hub. It's $30. It's really cool because it has a mixer built into it. All right, so then the way this works is it's kind of like, I'm actually going to put this at the top of the chain here. So this is kind of like a SSL channel strip, which is nice. So it's got everything you need built right in, you know, dynamics and EQ. The compressor is actually really cool because it can switch between 2 types of compressors. There's the regular SSL channel compressor, and there's the 1176. And for drums, you're probably going to want more of an 1176 type sound. So the 1176, for those of you who don't know, is like one of these classic vintage compressors. This is what a dedicated 1176 plugin would look like. And then this is great because it has very fast attack and release. And on drums, we don't really want a fast attack. We want kind of a medium attack, but the fast release is nice because it's so transient-y, which means there's a lot of quick hits. So you want the compressor to kind of kick in after the drum is hit and then get out before the next one hits in. So then it's actually doing more work. But anyway, so that's built into the CLA Mix Hub if you switch this to Bluey. So that's what I like to do for drums if we're doing compression. But the main reason I like this particular CLA plugin as opposed to other SSL plugins is because it has this built-in mixer. So that's on this bucket view up here. But before we set that up, you have to basically put CLA Mix Hub on each channel. So let me just do that real quick. So this is the best way I've found to add one plugin to every track in GarageBand is the old-fashioned manual way. But at least it shows up your last plugin in like recent, so you don't have to flip through the whole menu every single time. Okay, so, oops. All right, so we've got that up. I'm going to go back to my kick. So now we're going to go to this bucket view, and we can assign each one of these tracks to the mixer in the CLA hub. So the way we do that, in the bucket view, you can do this in either view, but in the bucket view I find is a little easier. And you just click on everything that you want in this first bucket that I have selected. So I'm just going to do everything except the overhead and the rooms, because we can only have 8 channels per bucket. And then I'll click on the second bucket and do the rest here. Now, this plugin has a pan knob, but for some reason it wasn't working for me. So I think the GarageBand panner is better than this one for this particular use. So I would just leave the panning as is on GarageBand. But anyway, now that we have everything on our buckets, basically the buckets have a kind of collapsed view of each SSL channel, but you can see 8 of them at a time. And then you can, so we're on the input view right now, but you can have the EQs all together, dynamics all together, and the output, and voila, we have our mixer. So this is like the output fader on a SSL plugin. So this is like a separate fader from the GarageBand fader, but we can make fine-tune adjustments to the mix in here. So like maybe the snare is a little too loud, we'll turn that down a little bit. Where it gets tricky is I did compress the rooms, so I want to actually put my compressor before, so when I'm adjusting levels on the CLA, it will be after the compressor, so this will adjust the compressed level, rather than if it was before, it would change the sound of the compression. So we want to make sure that this is going to be after any compression that's added before. So let's bring those rooms down a little bit. Where was that? 9.4? Yeah, 9.4. Let's try that. And there's still no stereo link, so that's just the main drawback of all of these. If you have dual mono tracks, I haven't really found a great way to work with them in GarageBand. Because there is no mixer in GarageBand, this is kind of like a backdoor way to basically have sort of a mixer, and it has the bonus of basically having an SSL channel strip on it. The next level up of plugins to buy is our absolute favorite for drums, which is Auto Align by Sound Radix. And this one's almost like pretty much necessary, I would say. So you basically set it up the same way in every DAW, but of course we're in GarageBand, so we have to do it one at a time. And then what this does, for those of you who don't know, is it basically analyzes each track, and it's for sound sources that are recorded with multiple microphones, i.e. drums. And it will analyze all of the signals and adjust the phase and delay so that everything sounds as good as it possibly can without any additional processing. So what we're going to do is load up the Auto Align 2 plugin on each track. And in GarageBand, you have to load them one at a time. I like to load Auto Align on the first insert of the track, so it is the first thing that's processed. Fortunately, once you do it once, it's right at the top, so it's a little bit easier, but you still have to do it one at a time. Okay, so now we've got our tracks loaded up. And this is the regular version of Auto Align 2, not the ARA version. So we have to play through the entire track to in order to get the stems into the plugin. So we click align, and then we play it back all the way through, top to bottom. Great, and now that the track is played all the way through, it's automatically aligning everything. One thing that I love about Auto Align 2 is it has this on and off button, which works for all of the plugins. On this recording, I can really hear it on the kick. It sounds very subby and like kind of all over the place with no auto line. But when you turn it on, it turns it kind of makes it more cohesive and punchy. Check it out. Here's without. And here's with. And it's that easy with Auto Align 2 and GarageBand and any other DAW. The third plugin that I like is Ozone. And this one has various cost levels. I think the cheapest one is like 50. And then it goes up to 200 maybe. I'm not really sure the exact price. But this is great for just doing your final master because it's got the AI in it, so it checks out the levels and everything, and it'll kind of put a mastering chain together without hardly any other work. So this is Ozone 10. Yeah, whatever the latest version is. Yeah, Ozone 10. Ozone 10 Advanced. So this is like the full-blown version. But basically with this one, I'm putting it on the master fader. I bypass the limiter because it's going to add in limiting. And then what you do here is you just play the track, and then you hit this button here, which will analyze it with their mastering assistant. So let's do that. Let it play and do its thing. That obviously got way louder. And we hear those GarageBand gates on the toms at the end there. That was awful. I'm just actually going to bypass those because it's not helping our mix at all. So the other cool thing about Ozone, so once we've run the AI, and you can also pick different genres here too, and it has like different EQ curves basically. So I just pick whatever genre I'm working on. This one's kind of like, I guess either R&B soul or like a rock. Just see which one sounds better. Let's hear it with the track. All right, and then you can click over to this detailed view, and it has actual modules, so it shows you the whole chain that it's put together. And basically the differences between the tiers of Ozone is how many modules you get in here. And this, so this is like a basic EQ, and you can adjust the amount of processing too. So like, for instance, here it's got the gray curve is what it initially put, but since the amount is only 50%, it's cut that in half, whatever it's doing, a plus or minus. So you can adjust that to see how much EQ you like. Stabilizer is similar to Gullfoss, which is kind of like a spectral compressor, I guess, where it basically compresses each band individually with like 2,000 different bands or whatever. So it kind of just takes the whole mix and like compresses each little frequency. I find this to be relatively heavy-handed, so I usually just start by turning this percent down to like 20 and then kind of tweak to taste from there, because for whatever reason AI always puts it on 50. Impact is going to be great for drums. This is like a multi-band transient shaper. So you can adjust each frequency band of your drum hits. This might actually be good on individual tracks as well, because these modules you can load up as just individual modules if you wanted to use just like the impact on a kick track, for instance. Imagers like stereo width, I just leave it on the default, or if it's sounding crazy, I can turn it off or lower the amount. Dynamic EQ is similar to EQ, but also has a dynamic element. So this is doing all cuts here. So what that means is it's going to cut more if there's more signal in that frequency level. So it's kind of like a compressor, but just for that frequency. And the way it's put together is different from a multi-band compressor. I'm not sure exactly the technical reasons why, but these dynamic EQs typically sound better because they don't have a lot of phase shift. So in general, I try to lean towards dynamic EQ rather than multi-band compressor. Another one of our classic engineer EQs is the FabFilter Pro Q, which has dynamic element in it. So see, that's kind of a visual representation of what it's doing. It's just cutting those two bands, but only when it's getting loud in those areas. It's got one on the high shelf as well. And then we've got the maximizer, which is essentially the limiter at the end, and then this will tell you where your levels are going. So this is kind of like a standard like limiter or maximizer type plugin. You basically just bring the threshold down until you're hitting the right levels, which we'll go into in other videos, but it's just standard like mastering stuff. I actually usually just delete this when I'm using Ozone because it's kind of a CPU hog and I don't always love the way it sounds. And I'll use a different limiter for my actual limiting. But if it's between this and the GarageBand limiter, I'm going to go with the maximizer. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you'd like more information, we have a free auto align course on our website. And of course, feel free to reach out on social media and in the Creating the Sound Lounge. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.